So Dracula is a 35mm black and white film from Film Photography Project with 24 exposures at 64 ISO. Back in January, towards the end of a trip to Prague, I loaded up my Mamiya NC1000S with a roll of Dracula and began shooting. And a quick note before I get started, I did have the camera set to 50 ISO since it doesn't have a 64 ISO setting. I don't think this would have made a huge difference, however, since I didn't notify the lab of this. With that being said, let's get into it. The first couple of shots on the roll were at the Great Strahov Stadium in Prague, a massive stadium that's a relic of the Soviet Union, which, just like this YouTube channel, seems almost abandoned at first glance, making it an ideal subject on film. This was the first shot of the roll, and the first thing that really stands out is the intense contrast between the highlights and shadows. The rows of seats in this shot make a great leading line, and again, the heavy contrast makes both the light and dark stand out nicely. Overall, I'm really happy with the couple of shots I got at the stadium, but once I got the shots back, I was left thinking I should have took more here, as it's such a perfect location for film. The next couple of shots are from a hike in the Peak District, and although they're not the best shots from the roll, they still highlight this film's qualities nicely. The first shot again really shows the drastic light and dark tones, with a section of the landscape being in the sun really standing out against the rest of the shot. The second shot in the same location looks almost like it could be on an alien planet, with the ridged textures of the rock making an interesting subject. The majority of the shots on the roll would be taken on a trip to Wales in July, starting with a couple of shots at the bottom of the trail up Snowdon. I guess with this shot I managed to not wind the camera forward properly, which has resulted in a pretty cool double exposure of the Snowdon Ranger sign. This shot is one of my favourites from the roll. It has a really eerie, lonely feeling to it, with so much going on in the shot without any signs of life. This is another shot that shows off the qualities of this film stock really nicely. The sheep in the foreground standing out against the dark tones of the fields around them, and the faint shape of the mountain in the distance gives the shot much more depth. The final shot on the trail up Snowdon was taken just before a tough climb to the summit, and gives a great sense of just how high up we already were, with the mountain's peak surrounded by cloud. At Bangor Pier, I took the same shot in both landscape and portrait, with the landscape shot being my favourite of the two. These were taken on a very rainy, miserable day, and I think these shots convey that pretty well. The final couple of shots from the Wales trip were taken at South Stack Lighthouse. Again, these were taken on the same day, so still pretty wet and miserable, but I think that works perfectly on this film. Anyway, as a big fan of the film The Lighthouse, I love how these shots turned out, giving me exactly the same feeling of isolation that the film left me with. The final shots on the roll really made me wish I'd shot more street photography on it. Taking to the streets of Manchester early in the morning on my commute to work, I kept shooting until the roll was finished, before heading straight to the lab to get it developed. The first shot is a typical Manchester street shot at the bridge between Deansgate tram and train stations, and although I've got this shot many times now, this was the first time on film, and I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I love a good shot with an out of place object, so this shopping trolley in the middle of the street was perfect. I did have to wait a good few minutes for a tram to pass by, as I felt this shot needed another element, and being right next to the tram line, it just made sense to wait for one to come into the frame. This shot is really simple but effective. I waited here for the man to be almost in the centre of my frame, and I went a little out of my comfort zone by putting the shutter speed at 1/20th of a second. I do shoot at slower shutter speeds quite often in my digital photography, but with the cost of film these days, I've been reluctant to experiment too much so far. This shot was definitely worth the risk though, as the motion of the man walking takes it to the next level. I ventured into Manchester's Chinatown for the final few shots of the roll. This is one of my favourite spots for street photography in Manchester, and it didn't disappoint. So thank you so much for watching. I'm just going to end the video by saying that I really enjoyed the shots I got in this roll, and with this being the first time I've actually shot on black and white film, I'm really happy with the results. So I'm excited to shoot some more. And thank you again for watching. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like, please subscribe, go and check out some of my other videos, and I'll see you in the next one.